I'm Graham Chamness, Senior Content Manager at MacroPolo, the think tank of the Paulson Institute. And today I'm here with Houze Song, our in-house economics specialist. We're going to talk about China's economy and developments coming out of the ongoing 2 sessions being held in Beijing. The headline news is this target Premier Li Qiang came out and announced of 5% growth. And that's a little bit off from the 4.5% growth that you had predicted in your latest outlook. So I was wondering if you could walk us through your reasoning behind picking 4.5 and what does it mean that they're going with a more aggressive 5%?
I think the reason why I was thinking about 4.5 is really the fact that once you remove the low base effect, China basically has grown somewhere around 4.5 in 23. By predicting 4.5 for this year, I basically just assumed that the economy will just continue its recent pace. And in the meantime, 5% definitely represent an acceleration or improvement in growth, which I think is quite difficult. But in the meantime, I also want to add a point is really that when Beijing announced its target, it actually allows some flexibility. It says around 5%. In combination, for example, with the fiscal plans they have announced together, it does lead to me and many analysts as well to expect a weak 5%, which means really that by around 5%, it is more likely to be lower than 5% than above 5%.
Okay, so I know Li Qiang came out and said that last year China's economy grew at around 5.2%. So do you think that Beijing would be okay if he came out with something a little bit below 5% this time next year?
First, I just explained that once excluding the low base effect created by the zero COVID in 22, Chinese economy has grown basically at somewhere around 4.5% last year. So 5% actually represent an improvement. And second thing is really that basically all economic indicators, GDP is an imperfect measure of the true state of the economy. And in particular, I would say the fact that China's ongoing deflation, which means that everything is getting cheaper every month, makes measuring GDP, especially growth, even more challenging. So as a result, I anticipate there's greater errors around the official GDP measures, which means maybe at the end of this year, the NBS, China Statistics Bureau, will announce something maybe around 5%. But for example, I can already anticipate that many analysts, based on their independent assessment, arriving at a conclusion that China's growth is really more likely to be around 4% instead of 5%.
Okay. And you've said that even achieving something like 4.5% is going to be a challenge this year. What do you think Beijing can do between now and the end of the year to try to stimulate growth? And what are they ready to do?
The reason why I say it's difficult is really the 3 main demand drivers: consumption, investment, and export. They all face headwinds this year. For example, consumption last year benefited from the pent-up demand, and this year this no longer applies. For investment, the ongoing local government debt problem, as well as the fact of low profit growth and overcapacity in China's industrial sector, both means investment face substantial headwinds. As for export as well, China's export last year benefited from 2, I believe, one-time windfalls. One is really the fact that Russia used Chinese imports to substitute for Western goods. And second is really the Chinese automakers take the advantage of the disruption of supply chains in the world and managed to export 2 million additional cars in 23. And I don't think such rapid increase in China's export likely to repeat this year, because already that basically all major Western countries already kind of like express their concerns, and many are drafting regulations to deal with this surging China auto export.
So you mentioned consumption and headwinds for demand. Is Beijing not going to do something to try to boost demand, domestic demand this year, and what do they have that they can reasonably do?
I think Beijing definitely proposed something, but my assessment is probably too little compared to the headwinds. Beijing this year basically announced additional 1 trillion yuan fiscal expenditure, and this basically equivalent to something around 0.7% of China's economy. My sense is that this 0.7%, this 1 trillion fiscal stimulus, probably enough to offset the headwinds I just mentioned, but I really don't see it is going to be big enough to push Chinese economy to grow faster, to grow something around 5%.
If they can't hit 5% and they're aiming for around 5%, what do you think they need to do to hit 4.5%? Well, can we expect more stimulus, fiscal stimulus, monetary stimulus?
I think actually I kind of like already anticipate this 1 trillion fiscal deficit I just mentioned. So I already penciled that in when I made my 4.5 prediction. And if they actually really want to achieve something higher, is that they probably at least need another half trillion, probably maybe 1 trillion additional stimulus in addition to what they have announced so far.
Your outlook has the witty title of Drag On China's Economy in the Dragon Year. Mm-hmm. And the two big drags continue to be, it sounds like, real estate and local government debt. What's happening on those fronts, and do you think there will be any substantial changes this year to address those problems?
I will start with local government debt. I just mentioned, I think that local government debt and the fiscal constraint it created will significantly limit local government's ability to invest, which is why I think that investment growth will continue to underperform this year. And for real estate, right now the situation is that real estate basically have affect Chinese economy through two channels. One is really through affecting construction activities, basically means fewer house gets built this year. And moreover, I think it's also kind of like more concerning aspect and kind of like more uncertain is really the financial ramifications from real estate hard landing. I think the majority of the top China's private property developers have already defaulted at this point, and the outlook suggests that the rest of them, that's the ones that have managed to survive till now, probably they will also default very soon. I believe that real estate this year probably will have a double dipping. Based on some high frequency data, it seems that this double dipping has already started.
Is there anything that the government can do to help these defaulting companies?
I really doubt it. Right now, I think that Beijing may offer some help, for example, to the home buyers, because in China, the majority of the home purchase, especially for new homes, through pre-sales. And the government is right now offering financial assistance to make sure those pre-sale units can be completed. But on the other hand, Beijing has so far refused to offer significant financial help to developers, especially private developers. And I believe Beijing will continue essentially adopt this strategy.
So it sounds like we've thought through the scenario of China hitting around 5% growth, maybe somewhere between 4.5 and 5%. But it also sounds like it's a realistic possibility that China could underperform even 4.5. So what do you think will happen if it looks like that's the scenario we're heading into towards the end of this year?
I think we have already lived through one such episode last year. Basically, in the second quarter of 2023, Chinese growth is essentially zero. And it really takes Beijing several months to act and to introducing more stimulus to help the economy stabilize. And this year, given the difficulties and headwinds I just highlighted, I guess that sooner or later we'll have another similar episode of a sudden significant deceleration of the economy. And I expect eventually Beijing will act by introducing more stimulus, but it will take some time, and which means that this year despite really the ambitious growth target, I continue to see substantial downside risk for the Chinese economy.
Okay, and is that where you come up with the idea of a U-shaped growth for 2024?
Yes.
A lot of people have been talking about how the Chinese government wants to prioritize national security and is turning away from pursuing growth. Do you think that's a fair assessment? And what do you think it'll take, if you agree, for the Chinese government to return to a growth-led model?
First, I think this is definitely true, but I also seen some change in recent days. For example, I think China's growth has dropped from above 6% before pandemic to right now around basically below 5% last year. To a large extent, this is due to Beijing's shifting its focus to security-related issues. But it also appears that this large drop in growth is beginning to trouble Beijing. Beijing feels kind of uneasy about the continued growth slowdown. So which is why Beijing this year has announced around 5% growth target instead of like the past 3 years that basically the growth target has been at least half percentage points below previous year's target. But about your second question, will this lead to any concrete change anytime soon? I'm not very optimistic. While I see Beijing began to express uneasiness with the economic slowdown, I anticipate it will take maybe at least another couple of years for Beijing to finally take action and put growth back to the top of its agenda.
How do you think Beijing's policy decisions are going to affect actual businesses on the ground, both domestically and globally?
My sense is that because that people, both domestically and internationally, business people as well as investors, have already been very pessimistic about the prospect of Chinese economy. So I guess maybe they will become less pessimistic, but still, more pessimistic view compared, say, before the pandemic. So the big picture of that, investors and business continue to find the Chinese market not attractive enough or not interesting enough. This probably will continue. And at the best, we can hope is that things may stabilize a bit, that it will not further deteriorate from the already pretty low level.
Well, thank you for taking us through the 2024 outlook for the first half of the year. The second outlook will be coming out July 2024, so look forward to reading that then.